Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, South Africa's energy crisis could land the government in court. Opposition groups and trade unions threaten to sue over a decade of crippling blackouts. Also, as the world's leaders and business heavyweights meet in Davos for the World Economic Forum, the head of the International Finance Corporation tells France 24 that now is the time to ramp up private investment as Africa braces for a global slowdown. And Doctors Without Borders. We hear from some of the hundreds of Cameroonian medical students heading to Madagascar for their training. The plan is to take their hard-earned qualifications and skills back home at the end of their intense period of study. But first, opposition groups have written to South Africa's government warning that it has until Friday to do something about a particularly bad round of power cuts or be sued for failing to fulfill an obligation to provide electricity. South Africans are also saying no to an almost 19% increase in the price of electricity at a time when many areas are experiencing up to 12 hours of power cuts a day. The price hike was approved last week and is due to begin at the start of April. Nadine Tron has more.
South Africans are threatening a national shutdown to protest an 18.65% increase in the price of electricity while experiencing at least 6 hours of planned power cuts per day. The National Energy Regulator approved the price hike last week to help Eskom to get out of 400 million rands debt. But many experts blame the power crisis on poor management at Eskom. Its CEO, Andre de Ruyter, resigned in December, and police are investigating an attempt on his life. Allegedly, cyanide was added to his coffee at Eskom's headquarters. Multiple organizations, including trade unions and NPOs, have sent a letter of demand via top lawyers to de Ruyter and the Minister of Public Enterprises to stop load shedding, as the planned power outages are called, or face legal action. The ruling African National Congress's main opposition, the Democratic Alliance, says it's also preparing an application for an interdict against the price hike. The DA is planning one of many marches and protests against the power crisis countrywide. President Cyril Ramaphosa cancelled his trip to the World Economic Forum in Davos in order to attend to the power crisis.
Nadine Turon there for us. Now, despite Ramaphosa's change of plans, his country is the most represented African nation at the World Economic Forum, with a little under 2% of guests at the event hailing from South Africa. Meanwhile, France 24's business editor, Kate Moody, is also in the mix at Davos. There, she spoke to Mactar Diop, the head of the International Finance Corporation, and asked him about Africa's prospects as it braces for the fallout from an expected global economic slowdown.
This is a time more than ever to really move and do more private sector investment in Africa, because government cannot sustain the level of investment which is necessary to reduce poverty. So this is time to really revamp all the PPPs, to revamp to create the condition for more private sector investment. And we have also an opportunity to take some reform in sectors which will be making a big difference. In the agricultural sector, to increase the production, we need to address land reform, which has been an obstacle in increasing food production in Africa. Many times you heard that Africa has huge potentials, they have land, they have water, but they are not producing enough. Now it's time to really tackle it. But I think also it's an opportunity to respond to this crisis by trying to make some structural changes in the African economies. And what we are doing at the IFC is try to contribute to it. By doing what? By financing more SMEs. We are small and medium enterprises as a job creators in Africa and the rest of the world. So we have a special facility now to support them. We are also doing more financing for trade, intra-Africa trade, to support the free trade agreements that we have, which will allow African countries to have much more resilient supply chain. But we cannot do it without creating a resilient economy. So using the huge potentials that Africa has in renewable energy is an opportunity not only to make this recovery sustainable, but also to use all the production of green energy, a source of growth for Africa, by exporting it in the rest of the world, being green hydrogen, being energy coming from solar or from hydro.
Climate change and the question of sustainability are huge issues in Davos every year, but this year in particular because of the energy crisis. How are African economies doing in terms of the renewable energy industry?
Yes, I think that you have investment which are coming now. So you might be surprised to see that it maybe is one of the sectors where we continue seeing some investment in spite of the slowdown in overall investment. We have seen a big slowdown in investment, only 3.5% of investment growth in Africa, and which is half of what we have seen in the last 2 decades. But in particular in the sector of renewable, we have investment which we are still coming in. Now the challenge is to ensure that it's not only that African countries are also part of the production, of the manufacturing of products that will be used for renewable energy. Solar panel, batteries, and things like that are becoming more and more important for Africa, and Africa can be part of the solution because they have the raw material and they have the possibility to be part of that supply chain.
Maktar Diop, thank you so much for being with us on France 24 today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Kate Moody speaking there to Maktar Diop, the head of the IFC at Davos. Now, hundreds of people gathered in the hometown of a murdered LGBTQ plus campaigner in Kenya. So he was buried in Sogoet on Tuesday. 25-year-old fashion designer Edwin Chiloba's body was found in a box by the side of the road in the town of Eldoret in early January. He'd suffocated on cloth stuffed into his mouth. The killing was initially widely suspected as being a hate crime and sparked calls for more protection of Kenya's LGBTQ community. But police have not yet made such a link. 5 people, including Chiloba's flatmate, are being held in connection to the investigation. There was a tense lockdown outside of a courtroom in Harare this week as 25 opposition activists appeared in court accused over an allegedly unlawful gathering. They were arrested over the weekend in what some say was a heavy-handed police raid. Some fear the detentions are part of a clampdown on dissent ahead of elections due later this year. Caroline Lombele has more.
These are some of the only images from Tuesday's hearing in the Zimbabwean capital. The trial is taking place under a media blackout, with only state media allowed in. At the scene were several lawyers and members of the opposition.
So we will come back tomorrow at 11:15, hopefully for the ruling and then continuation with the bail hearing.
These are people who are having private meetings who are not supposed to be here in prison. So it's a clear sign that there's criminal abuse of power to persecute political opponents.
It's the second day in court for these activists, who are supporters of the Citizens Coalition for Change, the country's main opposition party. They were arrested over the weekend during a police raid on an MP's home. The authorities have claimed that it was a public meeting, which means they would have needed police clearance. The arrests have sparked concerns about the upcoming presidential election, which is scheduled later this year.
Almost every province, in fact every province of the country, we are seeing these escalated incidents of violence. We've said we want elections, we don't want war. And this does not bode well for a free and fair election.
The head of the CCC, Nelson Chamisa, narrowly lost during the last election in 2018. He'll be in the running again this year. In March, the coalition won 19 out of 29 seats in parliamentary by-elections.
Increasingly, young men and women from Cameroon are moving to Madagascar for their studies. Over the years, the reputation of the island's higher education system has drawn more attention from other African countries, particularly in fields such as medicine. Our correspondent went to meet some of the 200 Cameroonian students who headed out a long way from home for their training.
There are close to 300 medical students crammed into this lecture theatre. Paulin, the 23-year-old Cameroonian, is among them. He travelled 5,000 kilometres to study at Antananarivo University and pursue his dream of becoming a doctor.
We blend in well. We feel at home here.
He twice failed to get into medical school back home, but applied successfully to get a place here in Madagascar. After successfully passing his exams, he is now in his 3rd year. Getting into medical school and retaining a place is harder in Cameroon. This has been a key factor in attracting some 50 Cameroonian medical students to Madagascar, where diplomas can be earned that are also recognized back home.
I have older brothers who studied medicine in Madagascar. They explained to me that there is really high-quality medical teaching here.
ASICAM, an association for Cameroonian students in Madagascar, has been helping new students here since 1992. As well as organizing cultural, sporting and humanitarian activities, the club helps its 200 members tackle some of the difficulties of studying in a foreign system.
The first difficulty we have in Madagascar is that our medical students can't take part in competitive exams that would allow them to specialize in a particular field. The second difficulty, which is more of a challenge, is the problem of getting a visa. A one-year visa costs 350 euros. We'd like it to be cheaper. Our parents fight body and soul.
All the Cameroonian medical students here rely on parental support because they aren't allowed to work while studying. And although they are grateful for the opportunities Madagascar affords them and feel at home here, they are also prohibited from practicing medicine on the island after graduation.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.